That real hip hop.
Y'all know how we do.
You're listening to Philly's own Matthias, aka Mr. 16 Bars. That real hip hop.
We try to tell people that Philly is a special breed. They hate to see us on top, they hate to see us on. They hate to see us come up, they hate we on. They hate the moves that we make because it's made to break them. We give them knowledge on tracks and hope our words can save them. I guess it's hard to get props when you know you lesser. So we right on your heels, I hope you feel the pressure. Rappers taking a roll, my shoes that never fit them. Before you come at it, king.
I want to start with a pop quiz. In 2020, with COVID and all the related relief expenses, the U.S. federal government deficit was $3 trillion, and its net worth obviously declined by that staggering amount. What happened to the net worth of households in that exact same year? The net worth of U.S. households rose by $14.5 trillion in 2020. Why? Well, the thing to note is when the government spends money, it doesn't disappear. Instead, it goes into household checking accounts.
Continuing in our journey of the top 100 most influential Philadelphians, we're now joined by number 27, Mr. Richard Vague. Welcome to Philly on the Rise. How are you?
Thank you for having me, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great that you are here. So you were named number 27 of the top 100 most influential Philadelphians. How did you feel when you got that honor?
I felt like Philly Mag had made a mistake, that the fact that I was on the list at all was, something terribly wrong is in the process.
I think they did a good job. They did a fine job. Your contributions have spanned both business and politics. And in 2020, you were appointed by then Governor Tom Wolf.
Well, yeah, it was a great honor. He asked me to serve as Secretary of Banking for the Commonwealth, and I took office like 2 weeks before COVID hit.
Wow. So throughout COVID, you were in office. Were there quite a few challenges that you faced because of COVID?
Trouble figuring out how to move forward. And within banking, that was true. Simple things like doing an inspection for a real estate loan were prohibited there for a brief period. So, yeah, there were a lot of issues to work through.
You even had some aspirations of running for president of the United States.
I did a series of focus groups across the country over about a 2-year period. Very systematic, organized focus groups with both Democratic and Republican citizens, and, learned a lot. And I think what I learned was that folks are really focused on day-to-day issues in their lives. Nothing, more exotic, not foreign policy, not this, that, and the other. It's, am I safe? Can I pay my bills this month? And I thought, perhaps the parties had strayed away from that. And I felt that if there was not a centrist candidate that emerged in the Democratic Party, that I might consider something like that. Well, Senator Joseph Biden did emerge, and he was a candidate of the working class. So I didn't really have that need, but we considered it.
Would you ever consider it again?
Well, I'm not considering it again, but I think the issues remain, and I think the issues remain acutely for the Democratic Party. It's focused on a lot of things besides the everyday issues of middle class or working class families, and I think that's a mistake.
Talk to us about your TEDx experience.
Well, I've had the privilege of speaking at a couple of TEDx events about some of the work I've done in economics, and they just do a great job, and I'm always honored to be part of it.
You have published several articles, and one of the later articles that you published gives the notion that Governmental debt is never the issue, but private debt of its citizens is the issue. Explain.
Yeah, there's a lot more private sector debt than public sector debt. And all the crises that we've had, not just here in America, but in other major countries, have related to excess private debt, mortgage debt, real estate debt, and the like. Government debt has never brought a financial crisis, even though it gets the lion's share of the attention. The '08 crisis that we had was all about an excess of, frankly, $5 trillion in mortgage debt. We had millions of houses built that were never occupied, and it brought a massive catastrophe. So, if you really want to understand economic trends, you need to look at private sector debt.
Conversely, though, you wrote a book. You're the author of 5 books, but one of your books spoke to how debt creates wealth.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is an underappreciated fact that the more debt creates money. Is a misunderstood principle. When a bank makes a loan, it puts a deposit in your account, which is new money to the system. The more money there is in the system, the more buyers there are for real estate and stocks, and the higher the prices go for those asset classes. And that's a trend you can watch over, 50 years, 100 years, no matter what you look at. It's a fundamental principle of economics. The more money there is, the higher asset prices go. The more debt there is, the more money there is. So absolutely. Now, the financial crisis we just talked about happened when the thing gets ahead of itself. This is a trend, but you can always do a little excess, and that's what brings the financial crises that we've had both in the U.S. and globally. But fundamentally, the path in the United States and elsewhere has been one of rising debt and rising asset values and rising wealth, especially for the top 10% of the population.
There's been a lot of talk about Trump's big, beautiful bill, and it hasn't been put into play yet. But what are your thoughts? If you could look into your crystal ball, what do you think the big, beautiful bill is going to do to the economy of America?
Well, the thing I'm concerned about are the needs of the lower income and less advantaged citizens in the U.S. And I think there are big parts of that bill that reduce or eliminate the money that goes to the very real needs of, hundreds of thousands and, in fact, millions of Americans. I don't think that's necessary. I think there's ample resources in the United States to accommodate those needs. And that's a part of the bill that troubles me.
Mm, understood, understood. In your spare time, you have an affinity towards history, whether it's American history, whether it is an international history. So, are you ready for the Richard Vague pop quiz?
Oh, no. No, I'm not.
I think you're ready. I think this would be an easy softball layup for you. 1929, actually throughout the Roaring Twenties, there was some things that happened that led to a market bubble in 1929. What happened after that market bubble?
Well, we had the Great Depression. We had the big crash in Wall Street in late 1929 that was ineptly handled over the next couple of years and led to a kind of a downward spiral that we think of as the Great Depression. So one of the great landmarks in economic history.
Do you think that it is a possibility? We've had several recessions throughout the past few years. Is it possible we could head to another depression?
Well, the Depression was fairly atrocious in that GDP actually collapsed by 50%, 50. In the Great Recession of 2008, GDP collapsed by 3%. 3% versus 50%. There's no similarity in the aftermath of those two crashes. And the reason the Depression was so bad was because Andrew Mellon and others that were in charge at that time felt like they should not rescue the financial system. And so it collapsed. and people's mortgages got called. Businesses that were reliant on loans had those loans disappear and had to shut down. Millions of businesses failed. You could not have handled anything worse than Mellon and the folks in charge did in the period of 1929 to 1932. So I think the lesson that was learned well by folks at the Fed and the Treasury was you need to step in and keep the system going. And as long as we remember that lesson, we won't have another Great Depression. We'll have some unpleasant recessions, but we won't have a 50% collapse in GDP.
Well, Richard, you see how easy that pop quiz was? Piece of
Thank
cake.
goodness. Thank goodness.
Thank you for joining us. And once again, congratulations. Number 27, 2 years in a row. Shall it be 3?
Somebody over there is going to wise up and I'm going to fall off the list. So I'm going to enjoy this while it lasts.
Thank you once again for all of your contributions to the city of Philadelphia, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for your time.